Targum Ruth, Ruth 1:9, the third part. In this video, I'd like to talk about the first word, yitain in Biblical Hebrew and yahav in Aramaic. So let's look at some manuscripts. The first one is a Yemenite manuscript that was copied in 1853, so it's relatively recent. So we zoom in here and we see in a red circle, that's from the text of the Hebrew Ruth, and circled in blue is that first word in the Targum, according to this Yemenite manuscript. And we see that just as we have in the Hebrew, a G imperfect, third masculine singular, that's what we have in the Aramaic, and it's the same verbal root. That having been said, let's now look at another manuscript that's much older. This one's in the Museum of the Bible. And as we zero in, we see here circled in red, yitain, once again, the G imperfect, third masculine singular. But then we go to the blue. So this is Aramaic, and it's the G perfect, third masculine singular of Yod He Beit. Now we go back to our text here, and we see that by going with perfect, we have the sense where Naomi is saying that Adonai has already given the gift to Orpah and Ruth for their faithfulness to her. Whereas, of course, the Hebrew is more of a wish, more of a blessing, therefore being a modal expression about the future. Now, before we leave this, I think it's interesting to point out Biblical Aramaic for Biblical Interpreters, page 119, shows the distribution of Biblical Aramaic uses of Nun Tav Nun and Yod He Beit, similar idea but different verbal roots. And when the G imperfect was what Biblical Aramaic wanted to express, Nun Tav Nun was the root of choice. If G perfect was what the text called for, Yod He Beit is what Biblical Aramaic used. So that's interesting in reflection here. It seems like if we're dealing with a similar pattern in Targum Ruth, that it is consequential, that it is a perfect, and thus appears Yod He Beit, unlike what we had seen in the much later Yemenite tradition. So with that interesting deep dive, let's continue reading in Targum Ruth.